Hey guys, it's Ash and P,
Hey,
and we are here for another week. We are going to get into second marriages continued, but first we need to finish discussing
the Q&A.
the Q&A.
Yeah, so we left off, we talked about, so one of our listeners asked us, I guess, kind of like our opinions on second weddings and wedding versus courthouse and just marriage in general.
Wedding, I guess.
And I said, if you like to throw a good party, throw a good party.
And I said, go to a courthouse and save your money.
I know. Well, weddings are expensive. I think I kind of want to explain my answer a little bit. And
yes, I think both of us should.
I kind of said before, I mean, my second wedding was bigger than my first wedding.
Right.
And that really isn't always the case for most. And it's probably because of a lot of things. Like your second marriage, usually you are paying for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, typically if you got help the first time, you're probably not going to get help the second time with family. And then also I think that I think it's easy to feel like we need to shortchange ourselves. And I don't want to say shortchange. I should just say like, well, I already had that and right. I shouldn't want it again.
Yes.
And I just feel like if you want it, it's okay to have a big second wedding.
Yeah.
Especially when the other person, whether you're the groom or the bride, especially when it's the other person's first, and they may want that. And you may feel like you're being ridiculous for wanting that, but it's okay to do that. I think for us, it was really that where we were in life and where we had come from, and we had a family at this point, right? Like we have Tristan, we have been parenting together.
Yeah.
You know, we had been together for, I guess, probably about 6 years before we got married. And so our journey and the people that were along for that journey got to be a part of that day.
Yeah.
And like I also said, I had said I was not going to get married ever again. So the fact that I was doing this, it was like, you know,
need to put it out there. Put it on display.
We're going to celebrate it. We want to celebrate it with everyone. And we're the entertainers in our families and our friends. We love to entertain. We love to host. We love to throw parties. Like that's like fun for us. So it just made sense for us. But you have to financially be able to do it. You have to want to do it. And yes, weddings are expensive, but you can also find some great DIYs and great shortcuts. And
you are good at that. I am not as good at that.
And there's a lot of people that are not.
Not everyone is, but you are very good at it.
Yes, but I also feel like if you need help in that situation, you can always DM me and I can give you some pointers.
Yes, you're so good at it.
I love it. But now you said courthouse. So explain your answer as far as courthouse, because you and Jason had a wedding.
We did have a wedding.
And it was a pretty big wedding. I mean, you said under 100 people, right?
Yeah, under 100.
That's still a pretty big wedding.
Not really. I don't think it was very big. It was pretty inexpensive. My mom paid for 98% of it. Luckily. It wasn't like a really expensive wedding or anything like that. It was very much a budgeted wedding. And I think so. I guess me saying go to the courthouse is me being selfish because we got married and bought a house in the same year.
Which is tough.
That is a lot to do.
Yes.
And so by time, like, you know, a couple years down the road, I'm like, dang, I really wish we had taken that money because my mom said, I'll write you a check and you can spend it on your wedding, or you can spend it on a down payment for the house, like whatever you want to do. And of course, because it was my first marriage, I wanted to have a wedding. I had never had a wedding. So of course I wanted to have a wedding. Jason was never like, no, we should really say, no, he was never like that. You know, it was like whatever I wanted to do, he was fine with. If I had said, let's go to the courthouse, he would have been okay with it. If I had said, no, I, want to have the wedding like I did, he was fine with that too. But looking back, I'm like, gosh, that money would have been so helpful.
I know. And here's what I'll say. It's so true. And there have been times where even since our wedding, I'm like, geez, we spent a lot of money and we could have done that. I don't think I spent a lot of money in the sense of like what some people spend on their wedding. Like it can get crazy out of hand. And we didn't, but we did still spend a good chunk of change. And I think to myself, like, of course, yes, you look and go, I could have had this, I could have that, especially after you have kids and all of that kind of stuff right after, because there's all of these other expenses. And like you said, you guys bought the house and all this other stuff. But there's something very special about that day. And I'm going to say this too for the listener who asked the questions, because I don't know. I'm assuming that's the road of like, do I, don't I? Because it's my second, If you want to have it, have it. It's okay to have it. Don't feel like you can't. Don't feel ridiculous for having it. If you don't want to have it and you guys are good, do whatever is right for you. But there isn't a right or wrong answer no matter what you do. I
agree.
And the other part of it is, people can also say, sometimes I hear like, well, it doesn't matter. People have giant weddings and then the next day they're divorced or whatever.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That is nothing to do with your actual marriage. The most important is the person that you want to do this with. But the celebration of the day is just that. It is you guys celebrating your love and your commitment to each other. And I cannot tell you how many times I look back and I absolutely love the photos and everything from that day, and having Tristan and all of that, just very special. So
you guys had a great wedding. It was beautiful. It was so much fun.
It was very special. And like I said, I think having Tristan part of that, and us just being a family and wanting to share that with everyone in our life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess I'm a little flippy floppy because I myself at the time, like the person who asked the question, it's her second marriage, his first. So I was on his side of it and I wanted the wedding, so it's like at that point in time, I would have been disappointed had I not.
Yeah.
And as much as I say, like, go to the courthouse and that kind of thing, it's so nice. It's so nice to have those memories. And here's the thing is I could say every day, just go to the courthouse, save money. But at the end of the day, I would be disappointed. Right now, if I didn't have the wedding to look back on and the memories and the photos and like, oh, remember this, remember that, I think that I would be so disappointed. I would regret it. And as much as I'm like, gosh, that money would have been so nice, I don't regret having the wedding.
Right.
It's not like I look back and I'm like, oh, I really wish I hadn't done that.
Yeah.
It would have been so nice to have the money, but I don't regret it. And I think I would have regretted it if I didn't have it.
Right.
So I do say go to the courthouse so that you have the money. But on the other hand, I also am like, I would have been so sad.
Whatever you do, get a good photographer, no matter what you do, tiny or big. That's what I'll say. I'll end it with that. Get a good photographer because you need those pictures to last you forever.
I agree.
Bad photographers for wedding photos or not.
No, the photos are really where you get to sit back and look and, oh my gosh, remember this part, remember that. That's really, in 15 years when I remember less than what I remember now.
Don't buy their photo book because it's going to cost you way more. I'll show you where to go get your photo book done too. DM me for all those hacks.
Yes.
So we talked about, we also ended it with, you wanted to talk about Tony.
Tony, yes. I want to talk about Tony because so the discussion where we kind of left off at before we went to the Q&A was, Tony was essentially, you said, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to get married again. I'm not going to have any more kids. Like, this is like, it is what it is kind of thing. Take it or leave it, essentially. Right. And Tony was accepting of it. Yes. He loved you and he wanted to be with you. It didn't matter what came or what didn't come. But also at the same time, it's and
here we are 3 girls later, married.
3 girls later, 2 dogs.
Lord.
All of that good stuff. But it is, so I want to touch on, I think where I said we're leaving off is, I can't imagine Tony not having his own biological kids.
I know.
And I do think that we do still have to touch a little bit more on kind of how you guys got from, I'm not having any more kids, I'm not getting married again, to where you're at.
That was not like take it like I'm just throwing words out there. That was a genuine, sincere feeling that I had inside. That I was not going to get married again. I talked about, reasons as far as safety of my daughter, my, here I have this young daughter and you hear of single moms becoming, almost targets.
Yeah.
And it's scary. It's scary as a single mom to put yourself out there and trust another man to come into your home. And there was reasons like that. There were just also reasons of like, I'm not the kind of person that absolutely needs a companion.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say this. I realized and I didn't realize this in my marriage at the time, my first marriage, but I realized, I kind of knew it, but I guess I didn't realize the severity of it until after we split up. I had been in a marriage where I was so lonely for so long.
Yeah.
That I didn't feel like I needed anyone because I didn't have anyone throughout our marriage. Really, I didn't have that support.
You could
I didn't
do
have
it
that
yourself
husband.
because
I could do
you
it.
were.
I was doing it all already, so I didn't necessarily need him. And I still had that same attitude, right? Like I don't need anyone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine. I've been doing it, whether he's been here or not, whether anyone knows it or not. I'm running the show. I'm doing everything. I'm the one keeping everything together as is.
Yeah.
And I had the attitude afterwards of, I don't need another person to come in. If I find someone great, but I'm not worried about it and whatever. And I was 25 when I got divorced. Like I was still so young. And to think like, I'm never going to get married again. Oh my gosh. That's a long time.
Yeah.
Right.
But, there are people that aren't even married at 25. Right. So for you to be like, I was married, divorced, and I'm not doing it again.
Yeah.
That is a pretty strong statement.
Yeah.
Being so early on in your life.
But I really was, I really didn't have that companionship. And I look at where I am today and I look back then and think that poor person and not that poor me, poor girl back then, because here I thought that's all I knew. Like that's all I knew. And I also had a single mom who, she was single in the sense of her husband wasn't there, but she never divorced him either, and not until I was out of home, like I was done in college, did she finally decide to get a divorce, So she stood around for this not healthy marriage. And I basically ended up doing the same thing, and even though our situations were different, I wasn't married to a man who was like her husband was at all. We still ended up kind of being these single moms in these marriages and trying to keep it kind of together for everything. And I look and I think, so I kind of told you backstory of my first husband. We met when I was 16. And then we married when I was 20. And then we were divorced by 25. I was divorced by 25. And that's still quite a while, that's still I guess 9 years, that we were together, through all of that. But we were both young. We were both young. But I think that when I realized that, I mean, finding Tony was like out of nowhere. Yes. I wasn't looking for anyone.
No, you tried to set him up with a few friends.
I did. I tried to set him up because I knew him from years back. So, we go back 15 years.
Yes.
We've known each other for 15 years. Mm-hmm. And he was always smart. And, I saw him, of course, we're the same age. I saw him as like a young guy because, he went to college and he did his young stuff.
He partied and
didn't have the responsibility that I did, that I did from a very early age. And he's the baby of the family. Right. I'm the eldest of the family.
And you knew his sister.
Yeah. So I feel like we were on different ends. And I was married at the time when I first knew him. So I would never have thought of anything like that. It was just, I should set him up with a cousin or a friend or whatever, mm-hmm. And then, and after I divorced, we just, stayed friends, whatever. We worked together and we'd always have lunch together and stuff. And then we kind of started to just like hang out a little bit more, like, because I think I had made a comment one day, like, I don't even want like to be in a relationship. I just want like, now that I'm having it, because now at this point, I'm actually splitting my time with my daughter a little, right? Yeah. So it wasn't very much, but maybe he had her like on a Friday and Saturday or something. And it was like, what do I do? I've spent the last 5 years with my kid forever. I have like, where am I supposed to go? Yeah. What do I do with my time? And he's like, well, I'll go to the movies with you, or we could go catch a movie. And we do it in group settings. We do it just him and I, whatever. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of ended up becoming something that I didn't see was even really happening. Like I didn't see it was going to happen. And it did. And I still was very guarded, but I think because he was someone who was a friend of mine and I trusted him from early on. And I knew what a great guy he was. I just never saw us two together. I just always saw him with someone else. Mm-hmm. Never. I just never.
But you also weren't in, like, at that point, you weren't looking for someone. And like you had said, you were in the state of mind, like, I don't need anyone, you know, like I have my daughter, like, I've divorced. I have my daughter. I can do it on my own. Yeah. That's not, so why would you think of him that way?
And I got to say this too, because it took me a while to really come around to just even accepting that he would like want to be interested in me. Mm-hmm. And I look at myself as like, well, I have baggage. I have this, I have that. And I'll tell you this too. We've kind of talked about this before where I think it took me a while to be like, I guess I don't want to say a positive person because it's not like I'm like, hey guys, happy morning. But happy morning.
You do sometimes say happy morning.
Happy morning. I don't pop out of the bed all bubbly or anything, but I realized after. You realize it after. You definitely don't realize it when you're in it, but I was so unhappy at home. Mm-hmm. And let's be honest, majority of the time we're not that happy at work. Like, even if you like your job, it's still work. There's still things, whatever.
You're not at a party.
Right. Yeah. You're not sitting on a beach somewhere. Okay.
Exactly.
And I look back and think like people used to think I was such a bitch and I was so bitchy.
They still think, no,
I know.
Kidding.
I know, right? I know. I know everyone still does that. No, but I look back and I can see how unhappy I was and how it probably just came out without me even realizing it.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure because as much as you try to be like, everything's fine, like I'm okay, this or that, when, we can hide as much as we want, but stuff still comes out.
Right.
It's still... Maybe you're not wearing your heart on your sleeve, but you are still in your everyday interactions. You're still going to have that type of like mindset,
right? Right. And I had these, walls that I would protect myself and protect my daughter and protect us, and that's just all I really knew how to do. I think because I had done it from an early age of just protecting myself, and that's the life you have. For whatever reason, I happened to just truly find someone that was such a good person and a good light that could really come in to that and like show me I didn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here. I'm supporting. I mean, he would go to, I told you, we talked about, we were all involved in parent teacher club. Like we were really invested in the school, and here this guy would come with me, and like, he was so into my life, whatever that was, he would come and volunteer all his time. I mean, I remember, I think one of the biggest moments for me was I was running Carnival. And I guess, I was running Carnival, and my ex-husband was supposed to be in charge of one thing. It's like, he's going to actually step up and do this one thing. And he's going to run this booth that I have like, hyped up. It's a big, important booth. I need someone there all day long. I'm running I'm running the whole thing. So I have to be everywhere. I can't be in one place. And Tony was really good about not ever wanting to step on anyone's toes. So he was like, I'll be there to help you if you need anything, or just call me after and I can help you like clean or whatever. But he wasn't going to be like, well, I'm the new dad in town.
Taking over here.
I'm her man. So I'm going to come step up. And last minute, he doesn't come. I can't find him. Then it's like, well, I'm not gonna be able to make it. Some excuse. I don't even know what. And I was just like, number one, I want to kill him. Number two, what the heck am I going to do? Right. And I called Tony, and he's like, I'll be right there. And he comes and runs the entire thing all night long. And then did it for years later. Then did it every year after that for every event. So I guess I want to take a break. We need to take a break. Yes. And then we will come and pick back up.
Yeah, pick back up on the same topic. Okay. I feel we have a bit more to uncover.
Okay. And then you're not getting off the hook. Okay.
No.
Okay. All right. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back. And I want to talk, I guess, a little bit about, you asked me, well, you said, I can't imagine Tony without his kids. And really, that's kind of where I got off on my tangent about.
No, it wasn't a tangent. I think it was good.
But I feel like, honestly, now that, of course, we have our kids, I'm like, I can't either.
Because, so Tony, in my opinion, like as an outsider, of course you get to see it as his wife and, co-parent. But for me, like Tony's always been so good with T. I feel like he's very careful in a way that obviously he's not trying to be her dad. Yes. She has her dad and he's not trying to be her dad.
Right.
But he does do for her what he needs to do. Like what she needs from him, he does. And I always think it's so cute the way he's like I love that like math homework is their thing, he helps her with the math homework, like that's their thing. And maybe they bicker about math homework or whatever it is. Because that's definitely a parent thing. Parents do homework with kids.
And that's what I think. Like, and obviously it's taken us some time. We've had some rocky roads along the way with all of us trying to co-parent with each other and stuff. But he has from day one been her parent.
Mm-hmm.
He is a parent.
Yeah.
And even her dad like says that.
Yes.
Like,
which I think is amazing.
Yeah, because he really did step up so early on and gave his whole heart. And and the amazing thing, I mean, he's got such a big heart that everyone kind of sees it, you know, that knows him and that is around him. And now he just gets to also be that way from the very beginning with his two littles.
Yes. And I think, you know, being, and we'll get more into being a step parent in a future episode, but that's kind of like a different role you have to play being a step parent, because being a step parent, you of course are still going to, you're going to discipline and things like that, of course, as well. But there is still also I have always been tougher on the boys than I have been with the girls, because I don't know if it's I don't want them to hate me. Like, you know, in some relationships, people like say like, oh, like they said, you're not my mom, or, you know, and the girls have never said that, you know, and I don't think they ever would have.
Yeah.
But it's also one of those things where it's like, okay, like I also don't want to overstep.
Right.
Like, and not only that, but I also don't want to be, we'll discuss it in further detail, but there were times where I was like, Jason, you have to be the disciplinarian. Like, it's not fair to make me
it's
be the only one.
It's not.
Because not only am I not their like mom, but now I'm being their stepmom who all I do is nag.
No, you're the bad person.
Yeah, like I'm the bad person. So, and I'm fine with being the bad person at times. Like, it has to happen. We all have to play that role, right? But it's like, I also don't want to be the only bad person.
So coming into, so this is your first marriage, but this is Jason's second marriage. And you mentioned he already had the girls. Mm-hmm. He's been married once before. He has these little girls. The girls were how old when you guys got together?
4. And so Kyla was 4.5. And Deja was 6.
Okay. So 4 and 6. So, did Jason want to get married again? Was that a conversation you guys had? You were young.
I was young. I was 20 when we started dating. I had just turned, so I turned 20 in July. We started dating by September, like the end of September. So I had just turned 20. You know, at that time, I don't think that we necessarily talked like marriage.
Okay.
Yeah. We just like had started dating. In the beginning, it was like, gosh, like he's 7.5, almost 8 years older than I am. He has kids. He's going through divorce. Like, I honestly, our very first date, I talked all about how I didn't want to be in a relationship. I didn't want to be in a relationship. I was going to take some time for myself. Like, I'm just going to focus on myself. I had gone through some stuff that summer and I was like, I'm taking me time. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not going to happen. And then it's like a month later, I'm like all googly eyes in love, like lame, right? But at that point, I was like, I'm not going to date anyone. It's Ashley time right now.
Yeah.
So at that point in time, we didn't discuss like marriage wasn't a topic we were going over. Mm-hmm. So, no, we didn't really talk about it at that point, but,
did you have, did you think like there was ever an issue because he had been married before, like going into it? I just wonder from the other side, you know, like, did you ever think like, I don't know, because he was married already?
So it's hard to say going into it, because in the very beginning, it was very, very innocent. It wasn't like
long-term, like this is forever.
That wasn't what I was thinking. And I'm sure that isn't what he was thinking either.
Yeah.
So not going into it, I will say that pretty early on into it, it did get, I don't know if I want to say rough or ugly. Probably about a month in or so, was the first time I ever met his ex-wife. And it was, we were meeting and dropping the girls off with their mom and her boyfriend. And he had told me she is going to try to get back with me. And I was like, what? Like, okay, whatever,
yeah.
Like I'm 20, whatever. Like, okay, that's weird. Like, whatever. And so he was just like, no, she's going to see you and like, be like,
and that is a thing.
And it really is, because it really was. It was like, she was totally fine, like super nice to me. And like the girls were all cute, like the girls were so sweet and they were very loving to me from the beginning. Like they were very sweet girls, like young, and they just loved everyone, kind of thing. So we dropped them off and the girls were really cute about me and I met her, whatever. We head back to his place. And then like by the next week or so, or I don't even think it was the next week, within a day or so, she wanted to get back with him.
Of course.
Like started talking about,
Well,
like,
and that really does happen. Yeah.
Like that kind of stuff. Meanwhile, she is living with her boyfriend, who she did cheat on Jason with. So they're living together, that kind of thing. And so it's like, and I think that might've been like when he was saying that, I'm thinking like, okay, whatever, like why, she's already living with her boyfriend, whatever. And so it's like, okay, like, sure, whatever. She ends up saying that. And so I'm like, okay, like that's weird. Like, I don't really know, whatever. Jason's saying like, no, like, we're not going to get back together, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, did you think like, I don't know how long into it, but did you ever think like, well, maybe they should, and maybe I'm like, maybe he should go back to his wife or anything like that?
So there were a lot of times, like there were a lot of occasions where it was like, what the hell is going on?
Right.
Like, what is this? Like, she would call him and like be crying about certain things or this and it was
and
like,
I totally can understand, because I remember getting those same kind of calls.
Yeah. He would call you.
Yeah. And all of a sudden it's like, no, I've changed. No, I've changed. And it's like, no, you have not. No, it's done.
Yeah.
No, like there's no going back anymore,
So I don't think I ever thought like, so I guess by time things started getting where it was like, okay, what the hell is happening? Like, I don't know, like she kind of just needs to like get over it, like back off, like stop, like why do you have to be calling my boyfriend all the time?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Like I get he is technically you're separated from husband, like they were legally separated at that point, the divorce hadn't gone through, but at the same time it's like, okay, but you already have a boyfriend, like this is over, like
right.
Like you had your chance kind of thing.
I also feel, which is so weird, but I also feel that happens a lot when the spouse is the cheater.
Yeah. I think you're right.
When they're the cheater, they may have moved on or have been with whoever and they're with someone or whatever, but it's still an issue to want to go back to that other person.
It's almost like, I don't want you, but I also don't want anyone else to
have you.
Have you. Yeah.
Right.
So it was kind of one of those things where it's like, what? Like, this is just so, it did cause a lot of issues. Like there were a lot of problems and Like I remember our first year was probably one of our harder years because it was one of those things where I kind of feel like Jason was torn, how difficult is it being like you had a child with your spouse and now they messed up and you guys are no longer together. And I mean, Jason and her went through therapy, It wasn't like it was like, oh, you cheated, like this, that's it, we're done. It was like they did go through therapy and stuff. So it's like one of those things where it's like, well,
right.
What the heck kind of
right.
thing, So I remember there was a point in time where I did get to a point where I was like, we're going to split up because I'm not going to do this. For me, I'm just not. Like, I love you, but I also feel like you don't realize what you have. Like, you don't realize what you have.
And you need to make sure that chapter is completely closed and you've moved on from there.
And that was a part of it, is that I was like, I don't know that he is done.
Like, and it's so funny because my stepdad now, Steve, who is like my dad, he made a comment to me. I remember when I left my first husband, he said, when a woman says she's done, she's just pretty much done. Like, you're done. You're not going to probably be able to go back to that. But when a man says he's done, he's not always done, right? Yeah. Sometimes it's not always that easy for them. For whatever reason, it seems to be a little bit more cutthroat when it comes from the woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, and I don't know exactly.
And I'm sure he was, but it's the mind games,
Yeah.
You get kind of caught in the mind games.
And it's like, I know things were really hard. So he had moved, into Fresno. The girls and her were living
out of town.
Yeah, out of town. And so that was being away from the girls was very difficult for him. Yeah. There were times where he thought maybe he wasn't going to be able to see the girls and things like that. And that was like, I've seen Jason cry probably a total of 3 times since we've been together. We've been together 15, 16 years or something. I don't know, something like that. And I've seen him cry a total of 3 times. And it's been over the girls.
Yeah.
It was his papa died and his cousin died. Yeah. And it's the not having the girls all the time, not being able to be there, that was really hard for him.
Well, and I was just talking to someone the other day about this, and it's so true. Men have such a hard time getting custody of their kids when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think that as much as we can sit here and I can sit here on the female side and say, you need to be treated better and da 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 da.
Right.
If you need to leave and do what's right for you and the kids. Mm-hmm. But for a man, I think that they're so scared sometimes when they are good husbands. They're good fathers, good people, good humans, and they're just in a bad relationship. And maybe it's on both ends, or maybe it's just that the wife has, maybe she's the issue, maybe she has the issues, or it's just both of them. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're toxic together, whatever it is.
Yeah, maybe they
which
just
is very,
don't work.
It happens. They're very scared to leave their spouse because they're scared that they won't get their kids. Mm-hmm. And it's hard. It's hard when they go to court and they've really got to have their ducks lined up. For whatever reason, it seems like they have a harder time getting custody or custody rights the same as their as a mom would.
Yeah, because we've even talked about I don't know them, but it's someone you guys know, and issues with him and his wife. And it's almost like maybe the wife really isn't in it and not necessarily wanting to be a mom, maybe.
Yeah.
But then he's also scared that he's going to lose his kids.
Right. So you stay in these bad marriages because you're afraid of losing your children.
Yeah. It's for sure.
Tough. So I can understand Jason being torn apart.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was also at a certain point, I mean, it was probably like 7 months in or so that I was like, I don't know. I don't know if he's done. I don't know, because I also too, I was young, but I also knew he was married. And even though they were getting a divorce, I knew that he had planned on being with her forever. Right. It wasn't like, oh, like, sure, we'll get married. Like maybe, I don't know how things were in the beginning. But I know at the time that it ended, like, I know he was heartbroken over it. Right. It wasn't something that he wanted. And so knowing that there were kids involved in that kind of thing, I did feel like I'm just going to wash my hands, because I don't need this. Yeah. I'm young. I don't need to deal with this. Like, there were not great things coming from her, like issues coming from her to me that would affect our relationship, and things like that too, where it was like, I don't need this. Like, I'm 20 years old. Right. Like, why am I going to deal with this? Like, I love him, but is it worth it?
So when did you realize it was worth it?
We actually split up. Jason and I split up. The hardest part of that was not having, I'm going to get emotional right now, but not having the girls. That was the hardest part of it. I remember we split up and he worked on the weekends. And there was one weekend we had broken up already, but he had the girls and he needed help. And so I watched the girls, and I remember saying goodbye to them. It was like one of the harder things, because I thought, like, I don't think I can do this anymore, where I can see them still, but it was still hard. Like, I thought I was saying goodbye to them. Mm-hmm. That was the hardest thing. So like, we split up, and I think it took him realizing, like, I had written a letter to him on our computer, and I don't know when he found it. I know years later he said that he had found it, but I don't know when he had found it. But it was basically a letter to him telling him, like, I love you, and you don't realize what you have, but one day you're going to realize how much I loved you. Like, you will know that she doesn't love you the way I love you. And you'll realize someday, you will, but I have to say goodbye, kind of thing. So we split up, and we didn't talk during this, like, it wasn't a great split up. Yeah. And we didn't talk, but then one day I called him because I wanted a discount. I wanted to get my mom and my grandma some Uggs, and I wanted a discount. And so I was like, hey, I actually called him from his store, because when we broke up, my phone was on his phone line, and he canceled my phone line. And so I was like, what the heck, right? So I wouldn't give him my number. And so I called him from his store. So he wouldn't have my number. And I was like, hey, like, I'm here and I want to get my mom and my grandma some slippers. Like, can I use your discount? And so he told the girls, like, that I could or whatever. And then he ended up, like, coming down and like, hey, can we go have dinner or whatever? And that was kind of like the start of us again or whatever. Yeah. But it wasn't easy. It was hard. And a lot of it is like, I don't think he ever thought, like, I don't want to get married again. I think he was always open to that. He wasn't ever like, no. But I think he was awfully broken. Yeah. From like what everything that had happened. Right. And, you know, that trickled into our relationship. And we had a pretty unhealthy relationship for the first year. It was not great, but then it was like, we finally were like, we're done. And then I don't know, for some reason after that, we were okay once, you know, like once we started talking again. But I made him work for it.
Good. That's okay.
I did.
That's all right. Well, when we, so many things to that, but I think our part of our marriages is these kids that come from our first marriage.
Yeah.
And they're a big piece of your heart, of his heart. Tristan is obviously a big piece of my heart. Right. It's a big piece of Tony's heart. I'm sure in all of my moments where I was this or that and I came off rough and tough and mean and, you know, whatever, he also was able to see the mother I was. And I know that we've had that conversation that he always would say, like, that was such a big thing for him. Like, you're such a good mother, you know? So I want to end it with this. I guess, you know, the biggest thing is if you're in a bad marriage, try to fix it, try to resolve it, do everything you can.
You have
get
to
on your knees, pray, go to therapy, give each other space, whatever it is you think that it may be, do what's best for you and try to honestly put it in. But if you are, you've got to also recognize that sometimes there comes a day where it's a no.
Yes.
It's a no. I can't do this anymore.
Right.
And know that don't be afraid on the next chapter, because the next chapter may just be your best.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that this chapter was the best
by
chapter.
far the best. Yeah.
That I've had in my life.
And you didn't think that you would have this chapter.
Absolutely not.
Not at all.
Okay. Well, that's it. Until next Wednesday, I think we are going to discuss step parenting next episode.
Sounds good. Can't wait.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for swapping with us. Today's music was brought to you by Callie Grace Music. You can follow Callie Grace on Instagram and Facebook. Download or stream her songs today on Spotify or iTunes at Callie Grace Music.